I am breakfasting right now, and I feel a little bit diligent this morning, and so I made stir-fry bok choy and some omelette. I have my tea with me, and I decide to have my breakfast at the kitchen today because instead of my bedroom because good habits. Hello, welcome again to my channel. So it's the new year, and what is a better way to start the new year with something from last year? So a lot of people around BookTube are doing their end of year list right now. Many of them probably have done it like a couple of weeks before, but I think I still have some books that I want to talk about that I finished last year, and this edition of Recent Reads is going to be something that is a bit more special than previous Recent Reads, because all three books that I am going to talk about in this Recent Reads video are, were buddy reads. So my experiences with these books were incredible, and I think that is such a wonderful way to end the year. So yeah, let's talk about the last three books that I read in 2023. So I'm going to start with this one. Now, one of the goals that I had for 2023 was to reread a book. That was one of my end of year goals, and also that was the only end of year goals that I managed to achieve. But at least that's better than none. But anyway, this is Leonora Carrington's The Hearing Trumpet. This was a buddy read with Shannon of That So Po, and I first read this book last year, also in December, and but at that time I didn't get to talk about this book because I wasn't active for a period of time on BookTube. So I'm really excited about talking more about this book in this video, and upon rereading, I still think that this book is just as awesome as I read it last year, and Shannon also enjoyed this book. And what's great about the buddy read was that Shannon actually saw something in this book that I did not notice, and our sharing session was really great. It was wonderful discussing this book with her, and so if you're wondering what did she notice in this book, I'm not going to mention that. You're just gonna have to watch her video for that. So I'm just gonna talk about my feelings about this book. So before that, let me just talk about what this book is about. So The Hearing Trumpet is about this 92-year-old woman. Her name is Marilyn Leatherby, and she lives with her family, her son and her daughter-in-law in Mexico. Now, this is really hilarious because last year when I read this book, I thought that these characters, Marilyn and her family, they live in Spain. And for one whole year, I thought that this book was set in Spain, even though, I could have checked the book's Wikipedia's entry, and which says that this book is set in Mexico. So yeah, so much for it being my favorite book. I didn't even know that detail. But anyway, that was something, just one of the things that Shannon caught. So yeah, again, benefits of rereading with a buddy reader. But anyway, let's continue. So basically we have this 92-year-old woman who lives with her family, but she's not going to live with her family any much longer, because her family wants to send her to an institute for elderly people, because they don't want to take care of her anymore. And before Marion is being sent to the institute, her best friend named Carmela gives her a hearing trumpet, because Marion is a woman who has issues with her hearing. And so with this hearing trumpet, she is now able to listen to conversations that she otherwise would not have been able to listen to. And after she receives this hearing trumpet, she is now able to listen better, to hear what her family has been saying about her. Basically, her family has been talking ill about her. She already knew about that. She already get this vibe that, you know, her son and her daughter-in-law didn't want her around. But with this hearing trumpet, she can now hear their conversations much more clearly, in secret, of course. So yeah, she gets sent to this institute. And that is where the story begins to be different. Originally, I thought, you know, the first time I read this book, I thought this book was going to be about the hearing trumpet itself. But it turns out that this book is going to take a left turn. Well, not just a left turn, so many left turns. And there would be an adventure of sorts awaiting Marion at the institute. Now, the institute itself is really strange. It has a lot of buildings with very bizarre shapes. Some of the buildings look like shoes, some of them look like tents and cakes. So we're talking about this kind of surreal sense of weirdness. And at the institute, she would discover that there is some kind of cultish thing happening around with the administrator of the institute. So yeah, I'm not going to talk more about that, but basically it's about her navigating that institute. But her navigating of that institute would eventually lead her into more surreal things. You know, I'm talking about stuff like ancient conspiracy, levitating nuns. You know, this is my favorite part. A lot of esotericism. This book also explores imageries of the religious imageries, Christianity, and basically also tries to subvert those imageries in ways that are, I would say honestly, feel kind of thought-provoking, but at the same time quite interesting. There is a really strong sense of rebelliousness in the writing that I just thought was really really obvious, right? And the way that this book concludes, there is a certain sense of change, which is something that I find very interesting, considering the fact that this book is a book about a 90-year-old woman, and yet it is still able to manage having character development for a character of that age. So in a sense, I feel inspired by that, because on a personal level, I feel like this book kind of tells you that no matter what your age is, you can always have room for growth. You can always have room for adventure. And so that is the part that feels quite comforting to me as well. And but then again, of course, at the same time, despite what I'm talking about, all of these growth arc that the character is experiencing, all of these happen in this series of really surreal and random and bizarre events that I don't think I can describe well. And the only thing that you can do to really experience it is to just read this book. Yeah, and that's basically my objective with this video. I want you guys to read this book. If you have not done so, because I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, maybe even more than 5 stars, but let's just say I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. A very awesome book. So let's move on to the second book. Of course, the second buddy read that I finished was this one by Amina Cain. This is Indelicacy, and I read this together with a bookstagrammer, Bill O'Brien. And now this book is really interesting, but before I talk about why it is interesting, I always forget about this part. Let me talk about what this book is about. So Indelicacy centers around a young woman. I think she's in her 20s or at least early 30s, but she's fairly young, and she's a cleaning woman at a museum. But we would learn that her name is Victoria, we would learn that Victoria has a strong sense of appreciation towards the arts. However, she's a cleaning woman because of her socio-economical position. She lives in poverty, and so while she's working, doing all the janitorial jobs at the museum, when she has the opportunity to do so, she would start to look at the paintings and the artworks at the museum and think about all the things that she could do if she is in a different position, if she is not a cleaning woman but rather someone who has the means and the time and energy to create arts. And one of the things that, basically not just one of the things, the main thing that she really wants to do is to write. And she talks about, she thinks about wanting to write so much and at the same time appreciating all of the beautiful artworks at the museum. Now, one day she meets a man, and this man is rich, and eventually she and this man would end up being married to each other. She marries this man, and suddenly she finds her life completely different. She's now no longer a cleaning woman, but rather a woman who lives in this really cozy big house, and she even has a servant serving her, right? And after she gets herself into this position, she finds out that yes, now she has the time, she has the ability to engage in her arts. But there is something about this new life that just doesn't feel right for her. So we would eventually see what that thing is and what she decides to do on that. So this book is a very slim book, and it's pretty much about how Victoria figures out something in her new life, that relates to her passion towards the art. So in this book, we get to listen to a lot of her musing and rumination on art in general. Victoria is a character who has this really strong affinity towards the arts, right? Different kinds of arts, but most of all to writing. And I would say, if you are the kind of reader who wants to read something that has characters just pretty much wax poetic about the arts, this is one of the books that you could try, definitely. Now, one thing I find really interesting about how the character of Victoria is written is that I personally find her to be a really unlikable character, and her unlikability is written in a very interesting way, and I could sense that I would not like Victoria as a character just a few pages in, because I could see that there is something off about her musing on arts. There is a certain attitude about her that I just don't particularly like. I find her reflection on art to be somewhat hollow and empty. And from my perspective, the way I see this book is that this is a book about a woman who has a certain unhealthy relationship with life in general, and how she's trying to use something that is personal and deeply personal for her to justify the things that she does. So this book, to me, Victoria is an anti-hero of sorts. Or, if you really don't like her, you might even call her some kind of villain. But there is something problematic about this character, which I find is presented in a way that feels kind of fresh and also somewhat unique. Now, that being said, I do think that this book feels a little too long. Now, this book is quite short, but I do think that it does feel a bit like an extended short story. There are a lot of white spaces in this book, and so I read this book fairly quickly. But I do think that this book could have been condensed and made into something a bit punchier, because it does have that really, I would say, relatively strong ending. I like the ending because it kind of shows how roguish Victoria is as a character. But I think it is sort of diluted by the volume of this book, all of the things that happens in between. Some of those things could probably be written in a shorter form, and we could get to the ending a little bit faster. In terms of character trajectory, I would say Victoria, when written as a character, in a work of this length, she doesn't really show a lot of variation, in the sense that the change that the character experiences it doesn't feel very dynamic. Like, her character just stays monotonous all the way. Now there are certain hints that maybe she is going to switch her attitude or characterization or whatever, but it doesn't happen very much. So yeah, I did find that aspect to be kind of bland. So I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. Still quite interesting, although it does have certain aspects that I just didn't consider to be particularly strong. So that's Indelicacy by Amina Cain. Let's move on to the last book. This is Excellent Women by Barbara Pym. Now this was a buddy read with Marilyn of Marilyn Maya Mendoza, the baby boomer booktuber, who is always very energetic and full of personality. Like, literally just check out her channel. Like, she's awesome. And I always feel inspired by her video and her energy. She's always doing things that that she wants to do, and I feel like we all should aspire to be like that. I mean, I want to be like that too. But sometimes we are being held back by certain aspects in our real life, right? So yeah, we should all be free. That's the dream. But anyway, back to the book. This is Excellent Women, my second Barbara Pym. And this was a reread for Marilyn. So yeah, kind of interesting. By the way, all of these reread things, we did it for Remember December, which was a reading event organized by a bunch of booktubers in December. So yeah, that's why there were a lot of rereadings. But anyway, Excellent Women was a wonderful book. It was such a joy to read this one. Excellent Women is about this woman in her 30s. Her name is Mildred Lathbury. And this story is set, if I'm not mistaken, it's sometime in the 40s, perhaps 40s or 50s. I think it's in the 50s. And it's about Mildred Lathbury, who is a unmarried woman living in an English parish. And she is unmarried. And that is a critical aspect of her characterization in this book. She works as some kind of a worker providing services for aged women, and she's a churchgoer. She participates in her community, but she lives alone. She lives at a place that she rents, and her parents both have passed away, and so she's pretty much alone until one day a woman arrives who is going to rent the space in the same building as Mildred, and that woman's name is Helena Napier. And after the arrival of Helena, and followed by the arrival of Helena's husband, Rockingham Napier, and also Helena's colleague, Everard Bone, Mildred's life is going to be upended somewhat. And we're gonna see why, there's this, this kind of change happening in her life. Basically, we would later learn that before the arrival of these new characters, whom I will talk about soon, Mildred's life has been kind of flat. Almost something that you can call as a really somewhat of a non-existence of sort, something that's really quiet, doesn't have much that she herself would call meaningful. And the arrival of these new characters would change that. We have this character of Helena Napier, who is someone totally different from Mildred. Helena is a really smart woman. She's an anthropologist, and she does all of these cool anthropology work, and she writes a report on the things that she does, and she shares it with other people in the learned circle, together with her anthropologist colleague Everard Bone, right? And at the same time, her husband Rockingham Napier was someone who has served in the army, though not in the combat role, I think, but rather someone who works with, according to this book, dealing with the social life of his bosses. And he is someone who has this really outgoing personality, really charming, and very electrifying to Mildred, at least. So these people can't be more different from the people the people in the church that Mildred usually engages with. Can't be more different than Mildred herself too. And it is because of these individuals that Mildred starts to question something about her life. You know, one of the anxieties that she has would be her unmarried status, and she would start to think about if something ought to change in her life. Maybe she should start to do things her own way, perhaps. Now, what I'm saying here is a fairly modern interpretation of what I consider to be Mildred's character trajectory in this novel. But the way that Mildred is written, and how her character is written, the development of her character is written, is that it is written in a much more subtler way, but not so subtle that you don't detect any. Mildred is someone who starts out as someone who serves the community, goes to church, works with aged women, but we get this vibe that she doesn't really feel that there was much meaning about what she is currently doing. And even though she says to herself that she's kind of comfortable with not being married, or at least she tells other people that she is comfortable with that fact, we can get this feeling that she is also somewhat anxious over the fact that she is still not married despite being in her 30s. And that feeling is further reinforced by her friends and neighbors, people who live around her, who are concerned as well about the fact that, some of them, about the fact that she is not yet married. So all of these things, together with the arrival of these new characters, they sort of serve as catalysts that will nudge Mildred towards a certain direction, towards, from inaction to action. And I like the way that is written. It is written in this kind of elegant way, not very heavy-handed. It's not very in your face. All written through this lens of comedy. Now that is another aspect of this book that I really like. How this book is funny, but at the same time it is not the kind of funny where you laugh out loud, but more like giggling kind of funny. A lot of the humor in this book is narrated by Mildred, and a lot of the humor comes from her narration, and the humor has a certain self-deprecating tone to it, which lends this book this interesting mixture of funny and also melancholy, because a lot of the self-deprecating comments, the ones that we would find hilarious, are also something that points towards whatever that is making Mildred feeling conflicted or feeling unsatisfied or anxious inside. And I really like that, because it really gives you this very fascinating look into her personality and basically her head, right? So yeah, and I find that tone to be very engaging. Feels like it feels fresh to me, and there is a certain honesty to it as well that I just admire so much. So I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. A really wonderful read, and I think that Barbara Pym is somewhat of an underrated writer. I don't think a lot of people know about her. Well, at least I think she should be more famous. But yeah, if you have the opportunity to read the works by this author, feel free to try it. And if you have read any of these books that I've mentioned, let me know what you think about them. So yeah, those are all of the books that I've read. My 2023 was, I would say, was nice, and I am grateful about what happened, all the things that happened to me. Let me know how your 2023 was like, and yeah, also let me know how your new year has been for you. I think I'm going to do videos on my best of 2023 soon. It's just one of those things that I expect to do, and I'm quite excited because I do think that there are some books that I want to rave about again in 2023. But anyway, yeah, I'll see you again in a different video. So until then, take care. Thanks for watching, and bye.